Welcome, everyone. Stephen Haden here. My pronouns are he and him, and delighted that you're with us this evening. I'm joined by my colleague, Megan Cliff. Megan?
Yes, hello. My name is Megan. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the program coordinator for You Flourish, a wellness platform that Stephen and I are working on. Very happy to be here with you today.
Yeah, thanks, Megan, for joining us and being a part of tonight's inaugural conversation around LGBTQ mental health equity and our work at You Flourish, the wellness platform that Megan mentioned, will be launching in early 2024. And it's designed to connect members of the LGBTQ plus community with affirming resources and support wellness content that's been designed by and for members of the community. And you'll have a chance to connect with other folks that have shared lived experience as you do, to promote well-being and help navigate challenges that may surface in your life. So we're really looking forward to bringing You Flourish to life early next year. So tonight we are going to be talking about understanding LGBTQ mental health, really with a focus on embracing our identity and wellness. So glad you're here with us this evening. Just to sort of set the foundation for our conversation tonight, I think it's important to understand both the disparities that exist and how those impact members of the LGBTQ plus community, and some of the underlying reasons that contribute to that. So what we know is that rates of mental health concerns within the LGBTQ plus community are at rates of 2 to 4 times greater than straight cisgender folks. And what that means is when you look at anxiety or depression, substance use disorders, and other mental health concerns, the rates are much higher among our community. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Discrimination, harassment, demonization in the press and through politics, our experience growing up and what that's like. Have we encountered adverse childhood experiences or traumatic events that have impacted our ability to have resilience, have a sense of belonging and connection? And if so, that undermines our mental health. And there's also a close correlation to our physical health. And over the next 8 weeks, we'll be talking about not just some of the concerns that impact our mental and emotional health, but how these also show up in our physical health. A statistic that's quite heartbreaking, but I think it's important to share just that this context is, LGBTQ youth in particular in this country experience really high rates of suicidality and risk of death by suicide. And so there's just a lot of work to be done to both educate a wider community on these issues and create safe spaces for folks to have connection, a sense of belonging, a validation of their identity, and also connecting people to the resources they need to thrive. So a little bit about my background. I'm a mental health clinician. I'm also the founder of You Flourish, the platform we've mentioned. And I also started a nonprofit called Envision You about 6 years ago, and it's based in Denver, Colorado. And our whole focus is on how do we enhance and support the members of the LGBTQ community so that they can thrive in their lives, in their mental health, in their professional lives, and to find a sense of connection and belonging in their community. So it's really focused on mental health and well-being. I'm so grateful I get to do this work as a gay man who's in recovery from a substance use disorder. Just recently celebrated 18 years of sobriety. I'm also a mental health, have experienced my own mental health challenges, including depression and suicidality. So I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to be doing this work and to be with you this evening. Megan, do you want to share a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. So, as I shared earlier, my name's Megan, she, her pronouns, and I am also a queer person in recovery. So, similar to Stephen, this work to me is personal and professional, is how I view it. Um, there were many points in my life where, I had support systems, but they didn't fully understand exactly what I was going through. Same with providers as well. So, that's really what brought me. Um, Close to the mission of Envision You and You Flourish, of trying to, increase the accessibility of affirming care, which I know Chelsea, you're familiar with what that looks like. And yeah, just to how to be there for one another. And then that's also what led me into social work specifically, because the providers that I did work with, which worked with me most holistically, were actually licensed clinical social workers. So that kind of inspired me to look into that professional career, which is how I got connected with the work here at You Flourish. Thanks, Stephen.
Great, thanks, Megan. Yeah, and tonight we want to ensure that this space feels safe and affirming to each of you. Your identity is valid. We treasure you. We're grateful that you're part of our conversation tonight and hopefully part of our journey over the next 8 weeks. So I want to start for those of you who may not have a lot of familiarity with the community, and that is the acronym LGBTQ+. Now, you may see various different variations of the acronym, but for tonight, we'll use that. And it stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning. And questioning can include a whole host of identities that fall sort of within the queer umbrella. So just want to set the stage as we're using that acronym: lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning. I touched briefly on the unique mental health challenges that the members of our community experience, and they're pretty significant, right? Whether it's rates of depression or anxiety, I mentioned, as Megan did, our own challenges in overcoming a substance use disorder. So much of this is in response to societal pressures and stigma, right? When you're living in a world that's not built for you, you're encountering discrimination, harassment, bullying, microaggressions. All of these things compound to create added stress, right? That may lead to us not feeling psychologically safe in a particular environment or physically safe. If you're living in a community where you can be fired simply because of your identity, that creates all sorts of stress. Fear of being outed in some places can lead to not only job loss, but impacts on housing and access to healthcare. All of these things conspire to create some really challenging mental health circumstances for members of our community. I think it's also really important to understand that within the LGBTQ plus community, we're not a monolith. It's a beautiful rainbow of so many different identities, whether it's race, gender, whether it's a person's ability or disability, where folks are from, what faith they practice. There are so many things that go into creating who we are. And so we'll call that throughout our work together that intersectionality, right? Which are all the different parts that make up who we are. And it's important to understand that within the LGBTQ plus community, we have such a variety of identities that exist. And it's important to note, particularly as we're talking about mental health, that for folks that have intersectional, marginalized identities, that road can be even more difficult. So if you're a Black trans woman living in a community that doesn't have a lot of support, maybe there aren't mental health providers that really understand how to support you, maybe you don't have a community or resources, the likelihood that your journey is going to be more challenging it is probably true. And so it's important for us to understand that everyone's journey is unique, and those intersectional identities can be both protective, meaning additive, helpful, or could present a risk to a person's safety and well-being. So I'm going to stop there and invite our guest in if they want to share a little bit about who they are, name, pronoun, where they're from, and why they joined us tonight.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea. I'm from South Dakota, but I reside in Denver, and I use they, them pronouns. I joined tonight largely because I've had the chance to work with Stephen and Megan, but also because I cherish the work. I am back in my home state of South Dakota, and I think it's been a forceful reminder of how important this work is and how necessary it is to create space. Especially given as Stephen mentioned, like safety issues and just health related matters too, and accessibility, all of the reasons that, what intersectionality is about and why it's important. And that's why I wanted to be here tonight.
We're so glad you joined us tonight, Chelsea. And for those who will listen to the podcast later, we're so glad that you've found time to connect with us on the Circles app. So one of probably the most pivotal moments in so many LGBTQ folks' lives, which is part of that sort of the journey of coming out, right? And that self-discovery that happens. So I grew up in a small Midwestern town that really wasn't affirming, and certainly I didn't know folks that identified as part of the community. And so in high school, as I was trying to figure out my sexual orientation, I didn't have a lot of role models. I didn't see people in media and television. I didn't have teachers or leaders in the community who were publicly identified as part of the LGBTQ plus community. So it made it a bit of a challenge for me because I didn't know where I would fit in. And so my self-discovery process really started when I went to college, my first semester at the University of Colorado at Boulder. And within a few weeks of attending school there, I felt like I needed to connect with a mental health professional. And I'm so glad I did. It was really transformative for me, and it helped me come to a realization that no matter what other people think, I am a person that weighs a certain amount. I am a certain height. My hair color is brown. My eye color is hazel. I have a certain skin tone. And I also happen to be gay. And this psychologist, a Native American woman who is now teaching in Montana, but at the time was at the University of Colorado, really helped empower me to think, this is who I am, and that my queer identity is in fact just one part of who I am and what I bring to the world. And I'm so grateful for my work with that psychologist many, many years ago, who helped me come to the realization that every single part of me makes up the totality of me. And in the absence of one of those things, I'm not Stephen Haden, right? And I just think there was so much beauty in the way that she brought that to light for me and helped me on that self-discovery process. I want to acknowledge, though, that the coming out process is not that easy for many people. When I told my mother, she was supportive, but she did have an ominous warning for me. And it's something that I hear often from other folks, which is, Stephen, I still love you. I love you for who you are, but I'm sad for the world that you will confront and the challenges that you will experience because of your sexual orientation. And I think that's something that a lot of folks here, even the most supportive and caring families, understandably, given the circumstances in the world that we live in, worry about their children. And so, I appreciate my mother's love and the care and compassion that she lent towards me. And I also want to acknowledge that, her concerns were, you know, they're understandable given what so many of us encounter. I wonder if either of you would be comfortable maybe sharing a little bit about kind of your self-discovery and your coming out process and how that may have impacted your mental health. And by no means any pressure on anyone. Just want to invite our audience in if they're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, sorry, my phone screen kind of froze there. So if I just randomly back out, that's why. But yeah, that really resonated with me, Stephen, because my mom actually mentioned how she was scared, and I haven't even really breached the topic of my gender identity with my parents. And so that was only when I came out as bisexual. And it was interesting because I live in a pretty safe hometown is where I got to grow up. And so I never really thought that she would use that kind of language. And I don't think it hurt me, but I do think it kind of opened my eyes to how other people, when I tell them about myself, how they're going to have a lot of emotions, externally, their own emotions. And again, those fears and those anxieties. And it was really eye-opening.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah. Yeah, the coming out process, I mean, it's incredibly challenging, right? To muster the courage to tell somebody that you care about something that's really personal and incredibly important, and we don't know how that person's going to react. Are they going to reject us? Is it going to become a volatile situation? Sadly, for so many queer youth in the US, they find themselves in situations that become dangerous to them. It may lead to them being unhoused and having to find a place to stay. I mean, that is the reality for so many people. And so I want to acknowledge how grateful I am for the process that unfolded in my life and my ability to access mental health support. And I know that's not the case for so many people who will listen to this conversation. That's just not the reality. We've talked a little bit about family and social support, and that certainly does go hand in hand with the process of self-discovery and coming out. But as I've gotten older, it's a term that I wasn't familiar with early in my journey, but this idea of chosen family. You have your biological family, the family that brings you into the world, that cares for you and hopefully nurtures you as a young person. But for many members of the LGBTQ community, either as part of the coming out process, there's tension that surfaces within the family unit or outright rejection. And so as we move into adulthood and we start building a community of people around us, we start building a chosen family. And these are the people that, while we may not be biologically related, we have a close connection with. These are the people that we turn to with some of our deepest secrets, our biggest challenges, and our willingness to share things where we are able and feel comfortable asking for help. And it becomes such an important part of our sense of belonging and connection for so many queer people around the world. And I wonder, Megan, Chelsea, what's your experience been around the idea of chosen family?
Yeah, I can hop in. I mean, the moment you started talking about chosen family, I immediately pictured my best friend in my mind. Um, I think we've known each other for going on 12 years now. And I think when we met, it was a very pivotal time just in our own identity development, our own sense of self. We met towards like the end of high school when you're, at that precipice of feeling like you're going to adulthood. You're finding independence and trying to figure out what life will look like when you're away from your biological family, which both and I had always been around within our life. And so I think as we continued on aging and then still remaining friends throughout so many changes that we both went through, we've really just come to a place where we can just come to one another with anything, and we know that we will be met where we're at. And I think that that's a beautiful thing that I'm so grateful for every day. So yeah, thanks for sharing. Anything you'd like to add, Chelsea?
Yeah, I think you said it very, very nicely. It's a privilege to have a chosen family because especially I'm still kind of going through the exploratory, like I still have a lot to learn about myself, and a chosen family largely tends to consist of people who have experiences that might not necessarily be relatable, but are personable. And it allows for, I think, a degree of vulnerability that really permits me to lean into understanding myself and being a part of the community, trying new things, having hard and deep and beautiful conversations. And I consider it's a privilege that I'm grateful for every single day.
Yeah, thanks for both of you sharing and acknowledging the privilege that we have to connect with caring and supportive folks is really amazing, and it is so it's so vital to our journey. And Chelsea, I also just want to acknowledge that you mentioned that you're sort of still on this self-discovery journey. And, I'm 54. And what I can say is that I'm still on my own journey. It's a journey of really understanding other people, understanding myself, continuing to grow and learn how I can be a better, kinder person in this world and contribute in meaningful ways. And also show up for the people that care so much about me. And I wasn't taught that as a kid, right? Certainly my parents, my grandparents, taught us manners, and there were certain expectations in the house. But I think that ability to lean in and be very present with people, to listen to what they're going through and truly be there for people is not a skill that we're taught when we're young. And so, I would just encourage you and our listeners to give yourself grace when you're going through this journey, because what I think is exciting is there's no finish line, right? It's an ongoing process of discovery. And what that tells me is, I may make mistakes, but tomorrow's an opportunity for me to do better. Tomorrow's an opportunity for me to learn more. And that is something that is very encouraging for me. So we've talked about, some of the disparities that exist and the reasons for those. We've talked about the coming out process and what that journey's been like, and the family and social supports that some of us have, others don't, and just building chosen family. I want to spend a few minutes talking about coping strategies. And let me acknowledge that we could do an 8-part series just on building coping skills so that we can be more resilient humans in a challenging world. But I do want to talk about that in the context of how we as queer people, as members of the LGBTQ plus community, attempt to navigate the challenging environments that so many people find ourselves in. And so I'll share for me, I'm very fortunate. I have a partner and 2 dogs. We live in Colorado, so we try to take advantage of getting outside, fresh air, nature therapy, is what I like to call it. And that's really helpful to me, for us as a couple, to help center ourselves, to kind of reconnect with nature. And of course, for any of you, and if you have a cherished fur baby at home, please put in the chat what type of animal, what's your pet's name, because on this series, we will definitely be talking about our pets. We have 2 labs. One is, typing this in, Rigby, and the other is Henry. So those are our 2 fur babies in our house. And so those are some of the things that are important to me, right? The ability to have some movement, connect with nature, to be with people that I care about in that environment. And the other thing I'll note, as a person in recovery, I'm always looking for opportunities to connect with people in places where drugs and alcohol are not the focus of that time together. And so while going into a bar and club isn't necessarily intimidating, and I don't feel at risk of relapse, it's also not the most inviting environment for me. So part of my coping strategies involves finding places where I can, spend time with people that's not, there are a lot of distractions, particularly those around drugs and alcohol. Yeah, I'm curious for you all, and welcome, Lorianne. We're so glad that you joined us tonight. We're talking about LGBTQ mental health. So thank you for being a part of our conversation tonight. I wonder, what are some of the coping skills that you all use to help build resilience and emotional sustenance to get through the day?
I can jump in, Stephen, and share something. Something for me is anything. So I'm based out of Colorado, and getting outside is a huge thing for my mental well-being. I feel like I can engage in more self-reflection when I'm outside, especially if I'm on a walk with my dog, or if I'm on a hike, just to kind of reconnect myself and the environment around me. That can really set me up for a day where I'll kind of feel some of my anxiety a bit lowered. That and breathing exercises, like triangle breathing, is really helpful for me as well. Just kind of calm my body down. So yeah, if anybody else would like to share, feel free to jump in with your audio or share in the chat.
Hi, all. Sorry, I just literally got off a flight and I saw that this room was open. I feel like I echo what other people have said in regards to going outside and taking a walk. I'm not from Colorado. I raised in New Jersey. Currently live in Brooklyn, but I've been kind of hopping around for the summer, trying to have fun with friends while I can. That helps me. I also sing, and singing is also really great because I think it's something I stopped doing. My dad died not too long ago, and I used to sing to him when he was in the hospital before he passed, and so I stopped doing that. But then recently I started back doing that, and it sometimes is hard, and sometimes it's the best thing. So that's me.
That was amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I I totally understand the summer hopping around thing, on a side note, but this is actually something really new to me. I don't use social media a lot. It typically turns out not being very good for my mental health. Wow, shocking. That's never happened to anyone before. But what I have done is I've allowed myself entry into spaces that are very queer friendly, if not queer centric. And so I've been on Facebook lately, and I've joined several different groups. One of which is for it's for trans men, femme women, non-binary folk, for Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm not very involved in Dungeons and Dragons. It's something I would love to do more, but just seeing the way that people interact with each other and uplift each other has given me such a new, like a fresh take on social media that's been so affirming and also just so pleasant and enjoyable.
That's great. I love the stories of finding ways to build connections with other folks around things that are fun and joyful, peaceful, reconnecting us with nature. And Loriana is sending our condolences and love to you for your recent loss.
Thank you. It's 3 years ago, but if anybody here has ever lost somebody really close to them, they will tell you that for everybody else, it may seem that 3 years is like, oh, girl, it happened a while ago. I mean, with a parent, I think that doesn't happen as much, especially because I'm a little younger than most people I know who have lost a parent. Yeah, it feels like yesterday, and we were very close. And interesting thing is, before I came out, because I never actually came out to him, but before I came out to him, he told me that if I was so I'm bisexual, and he told me if I was attracted to women, that he would love me no matter what, and that I just need to be true to myself in all things, no matter what. It was very powerful. And I wonder sometimes if I would have come out, I came out not too long after that. And I wonder if I would have come out so soon after his passing, if he hadn't shared that with me before he died, So, yeah.
What a powerful story. Thank you so much for sharing. That is just talking about, sort of that parental love that is so essential to our ability to grow into the person that the world needs us to be. And so when it happens in that way, it's really nice to honor your father in that way. And I appreciate your comment about the grieving process. There is no start or end. Well, there's a start, but not necessarily end to grieving, right? It's not a timeline. There's no scripted process on how people are to manage their grief. And so, whether it's 6 months, 3 years, or longer, there's an important person that's no longer with you. So thanks for sharing.
Thanks for listening. Also, I really appreciate what, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking down at the screen to see names because I have my hands full with luggage, but who said that the groups, joining different groups that were queer centric was helpful. I think I never really put a lot of stock in that. One, I think because of fear, as far as investing in those kinds of groups. And two, I think I told myself that I didn't need those things because I have been able to come out to everyone I know, and the reception was positive, and the areas that I've lived in have all been extremely progressive. So, like I said, the other aspect of it is fear, and I don't want to have fear prevent me from doing things that will ultimately benefit me. So I really appreciate someone sharing about that being helpful for them and specifically mentioning certain things, because I could totally see myself joining some kind of queer or Harry Potter group or something like that. Something else to nerd about. So that was really helpful for me. So whoever shared that, thank you.
I love that. Yeah, I think about, fear manifests itself in so many different ways. It's the fear to live our life authentically, and in some cases that's legitimate, right? Depending on your community and who you're around, that fear can be sizable, right? Around both your emotional, psychological safety and your physical safety. Um, the fear in asking for help, I think, for many people who are on a mental health journey, the willingness to ask somebody to help in that process can be really intimidating. So part of it is just thinking about how do we tamper that fear in a way that opens up possibilities in our life that might not happen otherwise. And so I think part of that is, that willingness to be open to new experiences and meeting new people. And that's exciting because that's, I think, where really incredible change often happens when we are sitting with some discomfort and uncertainty, and maybe there's a pattern that we have that maybe hasn't always served us. And we reach that moment, we go, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try something different. And so often really good things happen as a result. I wonder if anyone tonight has had that experience where there was some reticence or resistance to doing something, but when they kind of pushed through that discomfort, something wonderful happened.
I mean, Stephen, I can jump in. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is when I made the decision to stop drinking. In the moment, it was a coping skill that I thought was that I didn't realize was so negative on my well-being and the people that I cared about. And it was difficult to work through that and figure out that I was ready and intentionally going to take that step. But once I did that, I mean, my life completely changed for the better. Um, and I think a lot of that too, like Lorianne said, fear was holding me back, and anxiety of change and anxiety of, who will I be without this external substance. But it was life changing, so I'm really glad that I did it.
Thank you, Megan, for sharing. Anyone else have an example of something where they were sitting with a lot of discomfort, or there was a coping mechanism they were using that they came to realize no longer served them, and kind of reached that point of having the courage to do something different?
I mean, besides coming to this group, because I honestly, I'm already feel like I'm getting benefit from this. So something that I started doing that has been a little bit different is I have been more intentional about my mind. Like, I feel like it sounds so cliche to say my mindfulness journey, but like that literally is what it is. I would listen to all these talks from, Mel Robbins and these different people, Brene Brown, and, in therapy, and read all these self-help books, and they're all talking about mindfulness. And I was just like, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And then I never actually do it, like, ever, because I think maybe I started for a little bit, and then once I stopped doing it, I'm like, crap, man, I forgot to do it. And then I shit on myself for not doing it. But what I started doing recently is that knowing that I can't literally be mindful all the time. I don't want to hold myself to that expectation. To just try to be more mindful of certain things that I struggle with. If I'm having a hard time with something, like for me, like you were talking about, everybody's talking about coping mechanisms. So my coping mechanism is food, right? I binge eat. And so that has been very, very hard for me because, food is awesome. But, so I have historically, yo-yo dieted, would lose a massive amount of weight, gain a massive amount of weight, lose a massive amount of weight. And more recently, I've just, instead of doing things that have been intense and maybe unrealistic, I've tried to manage my thoughts and say, you know what? Yes, you had, I don't know, you didn't realize that the veggie that you ordered was going to be fried, like the Brussels sprouts or whatever, when you're trying to avoid fried foods, and you had it. Okay, that's okay. Like, and I understand, okay, you're feeling disappointed or shame, and that's okay to feel shame, but what's actually happening here, and changing the narrative in my mind. And it's something that I've been listening to people say for years. But now when I don't do it every single moment that something happens, I'm not getting mad at myself for it. I'm just trying to do it a little bit more. And I think it helps slowly. I think I get kind of frustrated that I feel like I'm never, like, there's a part of me that strives for perfection, and that's probably something else I need to let go of. Working on it. But being better about that whole thing, I think it's really helped me with this, I don't know, cope with my emotions, because I'm just being kinder to myself.
Well, first, thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing about your experience. And I know how difficult that is with people we know, let alone strangers in a group like this. So thank you for that vulnerability. And I also want to acknowledge and really appreciate the willingness that you have to give yourself grace. So many of us are motivated by messages of perfection. And I think part of that is, as queer people, we exist in a hostile world. And I think the expectations for us are often greater than our cis straight counterparts. And so we work a little harder to prove that we are just as much welcome in any space, that we're just as capable as anyone else. And I think it does lead to sort of that increased drive for perfectionism that I often see in my clinical practice with lots of queer identified folks. So the message, I hope in part that we can all remember, and it's an important coping strategy as well, is just simply the word grace. What are the things that I would do for somebody else? What grace would I give to Megan if she made a mistake? there'd be an abundance of grace and understanding if she made a mistake. But why can't I do that for myself? Why can't I offer that for myself? And so I think part of it for us is, if I'm going to do this for a friend, can I do it for myself? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in here, Stephen. I find that incredibly, incredibly relatable. So often I find myself, I love having multi-hour long conversations because all of my friends are, in any given direction across the country. And I find myself thinking when I'm having kind of hard thoughts or not giving myself space to just feel vulnerable or to feel pain, whatever it may be, or to even extend grace, I remind myself, like, why am I not speaking to myself the way I would speak to my friends? And I think it's really powerful because it's so easy. It's so incredibly easy to be judgmental of ourselves. Like I've been saying a lot lately, like the first person we lie to is ourselves. And I think just reframing that, it feels hard at first, but I feel over time, like mindfulness, it's a practice. And it's, I think, really both given me a more positive outlook, but also, again, just an opportunity to like find joy in learning about my own identity.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Yeah. Stephen. Oh, also, my dad's name is Stephen. So every time now I found Stevens. First of all, there's a lot of great Stevens out there. I'm meeting some really cool, amazing Stevens on this app. So, but yeah, I echo what was said. That honestly, everything that you've said since I joined, as far as your feedback and your takes from what we've saying, has been like, oh my God, like this guy is like reading my mind. And as not only a queer woman but also a Black woman, I mean, it's interesting because I've thought more about that with my Blackness, and maybe that's just because that's something that's like that's not something that you can hide. Walk around the world being a Black woman, and carrying around the potential fear that comes with that in certain spaces, geographic areas and whatnot. Just like, but I never actually thought about it, or at least not consciously. I've thought about that consciously a lot in regards to my race, but I've never thought about that in terms of how I identify sexually. And it's just, I don't know. It feels good, I guess, because I feel like I'm being seen. And I guess that's why these groups are so important, because you feel seen, right? When you feel like maybe the rest of the world doesn't see you, or you fear that they won't, how you want to be seen. And that I felt like when you said that you saw me. Now, so that was, when you were saying that stuff, it was very powerful and definitely rang true for me.
Well, I really appreciate the feedback. Thank you so much. And we're so glad you're here with us tonight, and hope you'll be a part of our Circles community. We'll be here every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So hopefully you'll come back and join us. One of the things I'd like to offer as part of our experience together is that as we near the end of our group, I'd love to offer a guided meditation. And I do this in my clinical practice, and I'd like to do that with you all tonight if you're okay with that. And part of it is, when we're engaged in conversations that might be difficult or thought-provoking or may cause some anxiety because it's new for us, I always think about how do I center myself? How do I center my patients and my community after we've had those conversations. And so tonight, I'd love for us to go through a meditation to help kind of center us, prepare us for what's next. Maybe for some of us, depending on where you are, you're close to bedtime. For others, it may be, early in the evening. You're about to go out and about. The other thing that I would like to share about what I think the value of this is that it's just good practice. For many of us, I think, Lorianne, I heard you say this, it's certainly been true for me. Like, I know the value of meditation and I don't practice it myself. And so when there's opportunities to have someone else guide me, it reaffirms both the value of the practice, but it also just gives me some material to work with. So that when I may be struggling or I've got a few extra minutes and I need to settle myself, maybe I could come back to something that you heard tonight. So if you're willing, I'd love to share a guided meditation that I put together for us tonight. And then as we wrap up, any thoughts or feedback before we end our time together? All right, so this guided meditation is designed to cultivate self-love, acceptance, and inner peace within our circles group. Find a comfortable and quiet space to sit or lie down where you won't be disturbed. Close your eyes and take a few deep breaths, allowing yourself to become fully present in this moment. As we begin, let's focus on the natural rhythm of your breath. Inhale deeply through your nose, filling the air, fill your lungs, and exhale slowly through your mouth, releasing any tension or stress. Let your breath ground you, connecting you to the present moment. Now, visualize yourself in a tranquil and safe space. This could be a serene forest, a calming beach, or a quiet meadow. Imagine the surroundings in vivid detail, the colors, sounds, and sensations that make you feel at ease. Picture a gentle, warm light above you, radiating love and acceptance. As this light touches your skin, feel it bringing a sense of comfort and reassurance. Allow this light to gradually envelop your entire body as if you're being embraced by a loving presence. In this space of love and acceptance, bring your attention to your heart center. This is the core of your being, the place where your true self resides. Allow any feelings or emotions that arise to be acknowledged without judgment. As we bring this meditation and circles group to a close, take a moment to express gratitude to yourself for investing in your well-being and say to yourself, I am worthy of love and acceptance. Remember, you are a valued member of our community and your journey matters. May you continue to embrace your authentic self with love and pride. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, and I hope you join us again next Thursday.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, guys. I realized I don't know how to back out, so I'm going to either let it end or attempt to back out. But anyway, thank you again. It was truly a delight to be here with you all. Thank you for your vulnerability. This was awesome and love that meditation. Thank you, Stephen.
Of course. Have a great night.
That's hilarious. I was staying on just to make sure I was following everybody.